Hello, everybody. Welcome to our third lesson this week. Oops, hold on a second. There, I had my phone with YouTube open to check that everything is working well, but I had forgotten to lower down the volume. Now I guess everything is okay. Hello again. Thank you very much for being there. As I was saying, this is our third lesson this month. We started with tips on how to improve your fluency. Then we worked with some techniques to work on the physical aspect of fluency. And today, hi, hello there. And today we're going to work on some techniques, things that we can do to boost our vocabulary. Hello, thank you for being there. Okay. All right. Oh my goodness. Okay, thank you. Hello. I guess the chat is working this time. Some students told me last week that they couldn't write there in the chat. I don't know why. It's something I have to do some research on, I guess. Okay, let me start today's lesson by asking you a question. Do you ever feel that you're always using the same words when you speak in English? Um, let's think of an example. Whenever you want to say that something is good, do you generally use the same adjectives like good, nice, beautiful? Or, for example, when you want to express your ideas, do you usually use the same expression like I think? Okay, in today's lesson, we're going to see what techniques you can use in order to expand your vocabulary and start using other expressions, other words actively. What do I mean by actively? Well, we're going to see that there's a difference between the kind of vocabulary that you can recognize and the kind of vocabulary that you can produce, actually. Okay, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrea Rial, a teacher of English from Argentina. I help adult students to speak more fluently and more confidently in English. Okay, having said that, let's plunge into our topic today. Here we go. Okay, before talking about this difference between active vocabulary and active and passive vocabulary, I got distracted by Floor's message. Hi, Silvina, as well. Let's think about the definition of vocabulary. What is vocabulary? If you think that that is just words, let me tell you that that definition is not complete. Why? Because vocabulary is not just words. Vocabulary is phrases, even sentences sometimes. Okay, and then what's this difference between passive vocabulary and active one? Well, as it says there, the passive vocabulary is the one that you have in order to understand whatever you're reading or listening to. It's vocabulary that you can recognize. Whereas active vocabulary is the vocabulary you can use when you write, when you speak, okay? The vocabulary you can actually produce. Are we saying here that perhaps active vocabulary is more important than passive one? Oh no, both are crucial. Both of them are as important. Why? Because the passive vocabulary that you have is the one that allows you to understand whenever you're having a conversation, whenever you're reading something. And the active one is the kind of vocabulary that gives you the possibility of becoming more and more fluent. Why? Can you imagine a fluent speaker with a small range of vocabulary? Think of when you were an elementary student. Were you able to speak fluently at that time? Not that much, because you needed to have more active vocabulary. Now, let's see what things you can do to activate that active vocabulary, sort of redundant, in order to have more possibilities the moment you have to speak. Okay, first of all, let's focus on what relevant vocabulary is. And in this case, what I need to do is to give you an example. I don't know if, yes, Marce, you're there. I'm going to give an example connected to you. Marcelo is one of my students, and he works for a company that manufactures refrigeration machines. he knows a lot of words related to these machines, vocabulary that I don't even know. He teaches me some of them from time to time. Those words, those terms are super relevant for him because he needs to know what he's talking about when he's doing business in English in order to be able to sell what his company manufactures. Now, do you think that that area of vocabulary would be relevant to you? Not at all. So here it is really important to determine what kind of vocabulary is relevant to you. I also have students that work for a chemical company and they produce something that is called bladders. Does anybody know what that is? Unless you work for Lances, perhaps you don't know what it is. It's something that is used in the production of tires in the tire industry. Well, they know lots of terms related to that, and those terms are relevant to them whenever they have to do business. Okay, in this case, it's important that you decide if some area of vocabulary is relevant and meaningful to you in order to try to make that part of your active vocabulary. There was a car passing by. I hope you haven't heard that noise. Okay, let me give you an example here. Have you ever heard this expression, to be snowed under with something? Okay, if you check this word in the dictionary, this is the definition that you're going to find, which is to have more work than you can actually do, than you can deal with. Have you ever felt in that situation? Okay, if you feel identified with some area of vocabulary or with some terms, that means that it could be meaningful to you, that it could be relevant. So in that case, you might feel that you want to start using that expression. Okay, I wrote here an example. I was snowed under with work when I came back from holidays last week. And this picture is quite representative of what that feeling is when you are in this situation in particular. What I recommend you to do, and this is something I'm going to repeat over and over today, is that you think of personal examples. Do you remember, if you participated in my first lesson, I told you that it's very important to make the language your own. Why? Because it becomes more memorable. If you think of an example connected to you with that term, with that phrase that you want to learn, it's more probable that you're going to internalize that term rather than if you use, for example, the dictionary definition to try to internalize that phrase. So in this case that I wrote, I was snowed under with work when I came back from holidays last week. If you were not on holidays last week, if you didn't feel snowed under with work after that situation, this example won't be relevant to you. Do you see what I mean? Do you see my point? Okay. Something else that I'm going to mention and get into more details later on is the idea of making a visual picture in your mind of that vocabulary that you're trying to internalize. In this case, imagine yourselves in I don't know, a situation in which you had a lot of work, perhaps covered with lots of papers, reports, the computer open there, lots of things over your desk. That visual picture of the term is going to help you grasp the idea of the term and again make it more memorable. Okay, so remember that relevant vocabulary is the one that you're going to be able to make part of your active vocabulary. Yeah. Now, what happens if, for example, you're reading a text? There are several words you can't understand to get the idea of a paragraph, so you look them up in a dictionary. Perhaps, in order to be quick, you just check the translation of a word, you get the idea, you get the meaning, and then you can understand that paragraph. But does that mean that you're going to be able to get that vocabulary into your active one? Most probably not. Why? Because you're checking the meaning of a word and not the usage. How to use it, which other words combine with that word. Let's plunge into an example here to make this clearer. Most of you, I guess, know the word deadline. Yes, we all work with deadlines these days, so I'm sure it's something you're already acquainted with. But you know the meaning. Do you know the usage of the word? Which verbs or which adjectives collocate? Whenever I talk about collocations with my students, I do this with my hands to show them that things go together. Which verbs, which adjectives collocate with the word deadline? There are three examples here that will show you some ideas about this usage of words. The first one says, I'm knackered. Knackered? Have you ever heard that term? Exhausted, very, very tired. I'm knackered. I find it very hard to meet deadlines at this time of the year. Did you know that you have the possibility of combining the verb meet with deadline? And do you understand, do you grasp the idea of it? To meet a deadline is to do things before the last minute, yes, before that time in which you have to have things done, have things ready, okay? Another collocation with the verb deadline might be the one we have in this other example. If I don't start working on the reports now, I'll definitely miss the deadline. So, what's the idea of miss a deadline? The opposite of what we mentioned here. Either you meet a deadline and you can do things in time, or you miss a deadline and, well, you will have to ask for some more time perhaps to do something. So, this is what I mean by learning the meaning of a word and the usage of it, the collocations, what words go together with it. Because perhaps you can internalize the word deadline, but you use it incorrectly because you use other verbs that don't go together with this word in particular. And then the last example here is about an adjective that you can use with this. For example, my brother is a journalist and he has to work to tight deadlines. What is a tight deadline? Perhaps you have heard the word tight in connection to clothes, something that is tight. Yes, I'm wearing a tight t-shirt at this moment. So a tight deadline is very strict. Now, do you remember I said before that you need to think of examples that are relevant to you? Well, in this case, it would make no sense if you write an example about your brother, if you don't have a brother, or about your brother being a journalist if your brother is not a journalist. Remember that the basic thing under all these ideas is that you have to think of personal examples. You have to make the language your own. And you do so by thinking of actual situations, yes, real ones, okay? Good. Let's move on. So remember we said relevant vocabulary, meaningful vocabulary is the one that you will be able to get as part of your active vocabulary. And here, yes, remember that you have to understand not just the meaning of a word, but the usage of it. Sometimes, before we move on, sometimes we tend to use literal translations when we speak in English. We think of something in our own first language, and then we try to say that same thing by translating word by word. That happens when you're only focusing on the meaning of a word and not the usage, okay? All right, then this last point says, okay, you have to get involved with your language. What does that mean? Okay, one of the things we have already mentioned, and I told you I was going to repeat it over and over again, is the fact that you have to make the language personal, okay? But here we're also talking about brain connections. Did you know that the more connections your neurons make, the more memorable whatever you're doing or whatever you're studying becomes? So it's not just, okay, make it personal. Let's see what other things we can do in order to really get that vocabulary and start using it right away. So make it personal, the first thing we have mentioned. Then, remember the picture of the example of that guy that was snowed under with work? Okay, if you make a mental picture of whatever term you're trying to learn, you're involving something else, not just making that example your own, making it personal, but you also have an idea in your mind of that feeling. Do you remember that there was a word I said it's a synonym of exhausted, knackered? Well, if you think of a time when you are usually knackered, perhaps the end of the year could be a good example. And if you can also get a visual picture of yourself exhausted, yeah, lying on a chair, that's going to help you remember that term. What other things can we involve? Okay, our ears. If we say something out loud, uh, it's another way of getting the information to our brains. Have you ever heard this technique that you can use whenever you're meeting new people? I tend to forget names a lot. I don't forget faces, but I'm very bad at remembering names. So one of the techniques suggested when you're meeting new people is to repeat the other person's name. I'm meeting Paul. Okay, so nice to meet you, Paul. Okay, Paul, what do you do for a living? After repeating that 2 or 3 times, your brain makes some connections and you will find it easier to remember things. In this case, just a name. In connection to our lesson today, vocabulary, terms, okay? And of course, you think of a personal example. You get a visual picture of it. You say it in a loud voice. Is that enough? Well, let's involve another of our senses, our eyes. Write it down. And whenever you write things down, try to use different colors to highlight that part that you want to remember, that you want to learn. If we go back to our example on the word deadline, perhaps you could highlight meet a deadline, miss a deadline, a tight deadline, okay? So a highlighter, different colors, a circle, whatever stands out so that whenever you look back at those terms, you will find it easier to remember and to learn, okay? Good. Now, is this it? Can you do anything else? Yes, you can. There is an app, a very useful app called Quizlet, in which you can make your own flashcards. And those flashcards can help you remember vocabulary, practice it, and be in constant contact with that. Why am I saying this? Because perhaps you follow all the previous steps, yeah? You think of a personal example, you have a picture in your mind, you say it in a loud voice, you write it down, but then you never go back to those terms. You leave it on your notebook and you don't revise that regularly. This app is going to help you do that. Revise vocabulary all the time. I have prepared a tutorial so as to show you how you can use this app in particular. So give me just 1 second. Here we go. This way. But, hold on. Oh my goodness. There. Okay. Where are you? Okay, this way. Let me go back to the very beginning. So, first thing, just go to your store and find or look for Quizlet there. Here it is. Let me show you. Download it into your phone. Yes, that's the image. Yes, I have shown you there that part. You can sign up. You can sign up for free. Yeah, you can use your Google account if you want to. Yeah, so that you don't have to start filling in any kind of information there. And once you're in, you have to create a study set. As you could see here before, there's a, I don't know if you can see because there's this thing, the plus symbol that is there. Okay, you click on that and you can start creating your own study sets. My recommendation is that you choose a title for that. In this case, as we are practicing this vocabulary connected to deadlines, I decided to use that as the title for this group of words that I'm going to keep together in a folder. Then you have here to complete the term and the definition. If you want to focus or if you want to internalize these expressions, for example, meet a deadline, what I recommend you to do is to type the example there. Remember, it should be personal. And then leave a gap for the part where you have to complete with meet a deadline. And then below where it says definition, you write down that phrase that you want to practice. In this second example, the phrase was miss a deadline, remember? And in the case of the third example we worked with, it was the collocation with an adjective. Yeah, there we go. A tight deadline. Okay, once you have finished, I have written here just 3 examples. You can write as many as you want. And of course, in this case, as they all have the same word in common, deadline, I group them together, but you can have a folder with whatever adjectives to describe personality, any category, or even one with different words that you want to practice and remember. So once you have finished with the definitions and the terms, remember to write the sentence, the personal sentence, where it says term, and the expression that you're not going to be able to see on the flashcard that you will have to come up with, where it says definition. Once this is over, you just click on the tick symbol that you have here at the top, and you can start practicing your vocabulary. Let me show you how this works. You will get flashcards. Yeah, so look at these. Oh, you can share the set if you want to. And you can also use one of the things, of the good things about this app is that you can also practice with other people's sets if you wanted to. So this is the flashcard, you see? This is what you're going to see, the example and a gap. And the moment you click on that flashcard, it's going to turn round and you're going to see the phrase that you're supposed to practice in this case, which is there, meet deadlines. And the same thing with the others, you see? You click on the flashcard and on the other side, you will get that phrase, miss a deadline, and here, tight deadlines. This is what you can do if you click on these sections where it says flashcards. But then you have other possibilities. Learn, yes, is the one I'm going to show you right now, okay? In that case, you're going to have either, yes, these are 2 possibilities, yes, to practice for short-term memory, long-term memory. You can just click on one once and then on another one to see the difference. But in this case, you're going to get your example sentence and all the possibilities that you have in that group, in that study set. So you just have to click on the correct one and that's it. If you click on one that is wrong, you will have the possibility of practicing this again. It's like quite intelligent and it identifies which terms you need more practice with, and the program itself is going to make you go back to those examples again and again until you have managed them, okay? So the other possibility is the test. Yes, the other way in which you can practice this vocabulary area. And you can choose whether you want to work with true and false sentences or with multiple choice. If you activate both, okay, you will have a bit of everything. In this case, for example, yes, you have the example sentence and one of the possibilities that you wrote before. You have to say whether it is true or not, and then you move on to other sentences. You see? Congratulations, we got it right there. And this is the third possibility, which is the study game. And you have to match, yes, the definitions and the terms, okay? Something also quite interesting about this app is that you can activate the notifications. And if you do so, it's going to, the program itself is going to suggest like a period of time or how often you should practice these terms. And this is just one study folder. If you go on including more and more terms there, you will have like a huge kind of dictionary there ready for you to internalize all these terms that you want to start using. Perhaps you might be thinking, oh, do I have enough time to do that? Okay, yes, it takes some time, but it really pays off in the long run. Why? Because I can assure you that this vocabulary that you're going to be working on through this application is going to be part of your active vocabulary. You're not going to forget it. Yeah. Why? Because you made it personal. You had a visual picture of it. You wrote down an example and you are constantly practicing it with the app. That's it. That vocabulary area will be yours. No doubt about that. Okay? All right, let me go back now to the presentation we had before, this way, and hold on a second. This and here. Okay. Okay, so let's kind of summarize, yeah, what we have said so far. And this time I have divided all the theory into two categories, the don'ts and the do's, okay? What to do and what not to do if you want to boost your active vocabulary. Remember that what we said was that active vocabulary is that vocabulary that you learn to use, and the passive one is the vocabulary you learn to understand. And by the way, it's natural and normal that our passive vocabulary is bigger than our active one, even in our native languages. Yes, it's like that. Okay, first point, don't translate. Remember, this is something we have said since our first lesson. That doesn't help your brain to speak more fluently because you have to go through your mother tongue before speaking in this second language. And also, we have added another aspect today because you're only focusing on the meaning of a word, yeah, and not on the usage. Remember, usage had to do with the collocations, yes, and the way in which words work together, okay? Second point, is it useful to memorize long lists of vocabulary? No, of course not. Yes, it's going to be very boring, and that list of vocabulary won't be part of your active vocabulary. Why? Because you're just getting some terms there in your mind, but you're not following all the other steps that we have mentioned. Yeah. So forget about memorizing vocabulary. That won't assure you that that vocabulary will be there ready for you to use it when you want to. Okay, and don't forget that everything has to be relevant. Don't waste time trying to learn vocabulary connected to chemical products or this other thing I told you, refrigeration machines, when that is not relevant to you. Yes, always focus on what is meaningful and relevant to you. Okay. And we said, what shall we do to increase and to boost, to expand our range of vocabulary? Okay, the opposite. Learn something that is relevant to you, that has meaning to you, that you find useful. Okay? Learn meaning and usage, as we said before. Don't use translations if you want that vocabulary to be ready there for you to use it. Okay? And get involved. In this case, I would like to tell you about an anecdote, something from my childhood. When I was a little girl, I used to love going to my grandmother's house. And I think the last time I was there, I don't know, I was 7, 8 years old, not more than that. But I could describe that house in so much detail that it's unbelievable. I remember the smell on the lift, yeah, while going up the floors to get to her flat, the texture of the sofa, everything. Why was that so? I was a part of it. I got involved with that. Yes, it was. That's why I remember smells, texture. The more senses you activate when learning vocabulary, the better, because that will ensure that the terms you want to learn are going to be there, ready for you to use them when you want to. Okay? So don't forget this last point of getting involved with that. Okay, this is the last part of our lesson today connected to vocabulary. Hope you have now lots of ideas on what to do in order to be able to expand your vocabulary, to be able to use more terms when you speak in English and not just the ones that you have been using for quite some time. As we said before, it does take time, yes, but the more action you take in this area, the more active vocabulary you will have in order to express whatever you want. Yeah. Remember, the more vocabulary, the more fluent as well. Okay. So hope you have enjoyed it. If you have any questions connected to Quizlet, just send me a message. I will help you with that. I will upload a tutorial, this same video, but much shorter, to Instagram, my Instagram page, yes, Andrea Rial, okay. So that if you have forgotten any of the steps you have to follow, you can go there and you can check it out. Okay, we'll be meeting again next week, same time, same channel. Take care and have a very nice day. Bye bye.